Hello and welcome to episode 262 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick, here as always with
Jason Rabinowitz. Hello, Ian. How's it going? How's your Wednesday?
My Wednesday is going very well, Jason. How's your Wednesday going?
It's rainy and dreary, and I've been on meetings all day, and it's been just a slog, but I'm excited to talk to you about the airplanes.
I like the airplanes.
Yeah,
the airplanes are good.
Airplanes are good.
Airplanes good.
They're pretty good.
Is the thesis of this podcast.
Pretty good. Airplanes good. Yeah. Except when they're not.
Except when they're not, which is where we begin. This is one of those almost impossible to believe stories.
Impossible to believe because news of it came out on March 31st, dangerously close to April 1st. Which, if this had happened one day later, I would have said, nah, this is stupid. This
is bad Photoshop is what this
can't be a thing. But Ian, what happened?
So, I'm not making this up.
We could joke about it because no one was seriously injured.
No one was seriously injured, but I'm not making this up. A Boeing 727 freighter operated by the Safe Air Company.
Go on.
That is the name of the operator. Suffered a runway excursion, crash landing-ish?
Not really sure.
While it was landing at Malakal, which is in South Sudan. And that would be news in and of itself. But what makes this close to being an April Fool's joke is the fact that the aircraft went off the runway and struck another aircraft.
But wait, it gets better.
That particular aircraft itself had suffered a landing gear collapse while landing at the airport at the beginning of February. So the plane that suffered the runway excursion / crash landing hit the disabled aircraft that had previously suffered a landing gear collapse on landing 2 months earlier.
Man, talking about this doesn't really do it justice. You have to see the photos because it looks like...
And we'll put that link in the show notes.
AI fake images are all the rage right now, but this picture looks like some nonsensical thing that a bad AI model would put together. Like, show me 2 old airplanes at a really remote airport, and it would kind of like cobble this together of like there's a 727 and an MD-80, kind of just like look like one, but they're all broken and none of it makes any sense. That is what we're looking at, but real. Yeah, so the MD-82 that crashed in February or suffered the landing gear collapse in February was operated by African Express Airways. And the 727, like I mentioned, was operated by the Safe Air Company. I mean, you want an aspirational name for your 727 operating to remote airfields in Africa. This particular 727 actually gained notoriety because of its efforts around the evacuation of Afghanistan. It was flying many things in and many things out of Kabul in the waning days as the Americans were packing up and flying out as fast as they possibly could. So lots of people are following this particular aircraft. I think it's safe to say there will not be any people following this particular aircraft anymore. I mean, what if it happens again? Maybe it stays relevant. I don't know. If it happened once, it could happen again. This airport seems particularly troubled. I don't know if you could so much call it an airport. Like, seeing some of the pictures, the runway looks like an unmaintained country highway through nothing. I assume there's some infrastructure there, but the runway doesn't look like in great shape. But there is some particularly bad vibes going on with old freighters at this airport.
Yeah, I mean, it's a slow motion version of one of the scenes in Blues Brothers where all the cop cars just kind of pile into each other.
They keep going.
So, yeah, it's rather impressive that this managed. Thankfully, only one reported injury and not serious. So hopefully this is the last time we talk about an aircraft crashing into another aircraft that's previously crashed.
Well, yeah, hopefully, but the world's newest boneyard is looking like it's having a busy 2024.
That's one way to get one started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just keep flying them in.
Don't even need to worry about parking.
No, you'll find the way.
Oh, boy. All right. This is one where we go, oh, Pratt and Whitney again? But it is Pratt and Whitney again. But it also might be Pratt and Whitney different problems? Question mark, ...
Not good.
So on the 30th of March, JetBlue's newest A321LR was operating.
Not an LR. I believe it was just a 321 Neo.
The 321 Neo.
An LR.
Not the
I
LR.
made the same mistake.
Okay. Should have been an LR because that would have made more sense. But it wasn't. It was just a regular old Neo. And it was operating from London to New York. That part I have correct. And it diverted to Shannon in Ireland, which is where we joined the aircraft because reports indicate that the aircraft diverted because of some type of engine issue. Now, engine issues aren't uncommon. They're certainly not unheard of, and they're rather routine. Flight descended, flight diverted, flight landed safely, no problem there. The problem here is that this is the second A321neo with an engine issue within the first week of operation. Or an engine issue. We don't know if it's the same issue with the engine, but an engine issue happened with the United A321neo the same week it was delivered. This particular aircraft, the JetBlue aircraft, was delivered on the 14th of March. It was inducted into service on the 27th of March, and it was on its fourth commercial flight when it had to divert to Shannon.
Transatlantic return journey as well. It never even completed one transatlantic round trip without any sort of trouble.
Yes. This was the second round trip of this aircraft.
Yeah, this is troubling for a number of reasons. This is no longer just, something must have just happened with that United aircraft. This is now repeated. This is the second time a literally brand new 321neo had some sort of problem with one of its engines, problem enough to either return to the point of origin or divert, in this case, on a transatlantic flight, back to Europe, back to Shannon in this case. Not good at all. But what's really not good about this is since these are brand new aircraft, and we mean, like, as we just said, these are days old in terms of how long they've been operating for the airline, the issues that Pratt and Whitney is having with its geared turbofan engines was supposed to be a thing that only affected older engines that had a number of hours on them that needed to go through some sort of inspection. I'm not sure if reliability issue is the right terminology, but there was an endurance issue with these engines. These did not have many hours at all on them. These were basically single-digit number of hours accumulated on some of these engines at this point, and they're already having engine failures. That engines have to be removed off the wing and another one swapped in. In this case, now JetBlue has an aircraft out of position in Shannon. Luckily, thankfully, another one of its A321s was stranded in Amsterdam for a few days and just happened to be returning to service at the very same time that this aircraft diverted to Shannon. So JetBlue was able to route that aircraft through Shannon and get people back to New York without much delay, which is pretty remarkable timing there. That 321 was in Amsterdam, I believe, for other reasons. Not sure what happened there, but unrelated to the engine. But this is troubling. Pratt and Whitney's got some problems on its hands, and it needs to get this sorted out. If I were an airline, I would be very upset right now that I'm getting aircraft delivered brand new that then have catastrophic engine failures within just hours of inauguration.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. To the credit of the Irish Accident Investigation Unit, which is beginning an investigation. They're looking at this with JetBlue. They're conducting what they're calling an initial examination of the engine to determine whether or not they need to investigate further. So right now it sounds like they don't know exactly what happened, or they're not saying exactly what happened yet. But if they find something that requires further investigation, they could open an official investigation. So that'll be interesting to see what they come up with, whether or not this was something that was more precautionary in nature and they can, get the aircraft back in service quickly. But as of right now, the aircraft remains in Shannon.
Yeah, not great. Well, I'm sure everyone will be keeping a very close eye on what happens here because this is bad. Pratt and Whitney's got some issues it needs to figure out post haste. This isn't acceptable in any level. And I'm sure JetBlue's had some rather difficult conversations with its engine manufacturer right now.
Speaking of difficult conversations with engine manufacturers, we're going to stick with Pratt and Whitney, but we're going to shift airlines and go over to Spirit. Spirit this week announced that they had reached a deal with Pratt and Whitney affiliate International Aero Engines, so IAE, for a $150 to $200 million credit for their geared turbofan troubles that we've previously discussed. So this is where the powdered metal has created issues with geared turbofan engines, which has necessitated replacing parts, doing repeated inspections, and so on and so forth. They will receive a monthly credit from IE based on how much time the geared turbofan powered fleet spends on the ground. Spirit has said that over the course of this year, they expect an average of 25 aircraft to remain grounded. And that's a yearly average. But by the end of the year, they expect to have upwards of 40 aircraft grounded for engine maintenance and inspections. And if you remember previously, we've talked about how long the lead time is to get engines back onto the wings. We're talking about nearly a year. And Pratt & Whitney is hoping that opening additional MRO stations will lower that time. But still, I mean, upwards of 300 days from taking the engine and giving it back to the airline is a big hit for these airlines, especially the ones that are operating A320 family fleet alone, exclusively, like Spirit.
Yeah. So this came up on Twitter the other day that not enough attention is being paid to the situation, with Spirit, but with Pratt and Whitney here, that all attention has been rightfully or wrongfully on Boeing and United for the last couple of weeks. That there's been a lot of scrutiny on Boeing, of course, deservingly, and United probably less deservingly, while the Pratt and Whitney issues have quite literally shook some airlines to the core, to the point where some of them don't exist anymore. And it hasn't exactly flown under the radar, but this guy's probably right. This probably hasn't gotten the attention it's deserved. It's kind of hard to quantify or convey to people reading the news or airline passengers what exactly is going on here, because the engine is a part of the aircraft, and people would think, oh, that's just Boeing or that's just Airbus. But here we have an engine manufacturer that is literally tanking entire airlines. And does Spirit survive? Probably, but it should be in a much better condition than it is now. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think the thing with the GTF issues is that I think anytime you can pinpoint and quantify an issue, it becomes less reportable. It's like an inverse correlation to how often people will talk about it, because it's known, it's baked in, everyone understands it. And I mean, everyone involved in the situation, not necessarily the general public. But also, it's not really, it is a safety issue, but it's one that is known and being addressed. So, the aircraft don't keep flying with an unsafe engine.
Yeah, less of a story since the outcome is known, the fix is known, and the fix, it takes a while, but they know what needs to be done, they know how to prevent it. But here we are with seemingly at least completely separate issue affecting these aircraft. And it's not great. And it probably hasn't gotten as much time as it's deserved unless you are affected by it, who would be one of these, a passenger who would have flown Spirit on a route that it was supposed to operate, but it now can't. Or if you were supposed to fly in an airline that no longer exists because these Pratt and Whitney issues have quite literally made the airline not exist anymore.
I mean, Wizz this week cut another 103 routes.
So that's crazy.
103.
It's a period of time where they should be adding 103 routes to meet demand, but they can't. This is definitely one of the biggest issues impacting the industry at this moment. But like you said, Ian, it's not really getting the attention it probably deserves just because it's a known quantity, or it's a known issue and a known solution. At least we think it is.
I mean, this particular issue, sure. The separate or possibly new issues affecting new aircraft, that's another story. Yeah, you want things to be proportional. And I think that from a business standpoint, it's certainly been covered well in relation between, the airlines and Pratt and Whitney and how suppliers are being affected and things like that. But I don't think there's been as much attention paid, certainly, to the retail customer aspect of it. Mostly because, people aren't really concerned with, grounded aircraft unless they're, the doors are falling off.
Yeah, it's not like a serious safety issue. This shouldn't have any real impact on safety. There is a very slim chance that it could, but it's not something that really the news media is going to pick up and say, "This could you die on your next flight with this engine?" Like, no, it's going to be fine. The engine's going to shut off and they're going to use the other one to fly somewhere that you probably didn't intend to go to. But it's a tough one to get out there in the mainstream, but I kind of expect it to happen somewhat soon if this continues.
Yeah, especially if the time off wing doesn't decrease, it's going to keep going and keep going and keep going. And then it's not like airlines that are affected by this can go order Boeing aircraft. And it's not like airlines with Boeing aircraft can come over and order Airbus aircraft. It's locked into not a tailspin, but everything's just locked in because of supply chain constraints and because of some self-inflicted wounds.
Yeah, it's just also not supposed to be like this. Like, as time goes on, as the decades march, things are supposed to get better, incrementally better over the years, and reliability is supposed to go up, not down. Like, when is the last time a commercial jet engine was introduced having been plagued by issues like this? Like, it seems like the outgoing gen of engines, like your GE90s and your anything on the 7.3 of the NG era, the 320ceo, like, they're so reliable compared to what's being put on the wing now. It's weird.
Yeah. Basically starting with the Trent 1000 and now the geared turbofan. And to the Leap's credit, that's a good engine.
They're just walking down the hallway whistling, minding their own business at this point.
Yeah, right. Just keep doing what you're doing. Okay, let's really shift gears and talk about the FAA's Mental Health and Aviation Medical Clearance Aviation Rulemaking Committee. Why aviation is in there twice, I don't know, but it is. This panel came out with recommendations this week on mental health and the medical certification system for pilots and air traffic controllers in the US. This all stems from a belief and a claim throughout the industry that addressing mental health issues is treated in a punitive way by the FAA, and that punitive treatment forces or prevents pilots and air traffic controllers from seeking mental health services that they would otherwise seek for fear of negatively impacting their careers. And so the panel, which produced a lengthy report, which we will put in the show notes, lots of good recommendations and things like that to work your way through. But the headlines are the summary is thus. The panel says that the FAA should create a non-punitive pathway for disclosing mental health conditions and treatments, revise and evaluate the requirements for reporting and certification qualification of psychotherapy. So just talking with a therapist, depression, anxiety, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder. So changing the requirements for reporting those conditions to the FAA. Right now, those conditions must be reported to the FAA, and a full mental health exam is then required, which could sideline or prevent pilots from flying and air traffic controllers from controlling air traffic. The next one is ensure that aeromedical screening protocols and requirements are based on safety management system principles. Here we're hearing safety management system again, i.e. proportionate, relevant, and risk-based, and appropriately communicated to applicants. So basically have a system in place and then let people know what that system is. Because right now, a lot of the criticism stems from not knowing exactly what the criteria are that are going to be used to evaluate folks. Expand the use and promotion of peer support programs. So this is very common. There are existing peer support programs, but it's also more common elsewhere in the UK, in the EU, and New Zealand and Australia, which were benchmark comparisons for this panel's study. Those are used more often elsewhere. Develop mental health literacy, education, and awareness campaigns. Sounds like a good idea to me. Increase mental health training and improve quality assurance for aviation medical examiners. So one of the things that the panel found is that qualified aviation medical examiners, basically doctors who are contracted by the FAA to be specialists in issuing the medical licensing for aviators, those doctors don't necessarily have mental health training above and beyond, just general education. And the quality varies from AME to AME. And then the last one is modernize the FAA's information management system and aviation medical certification subsystem. Because as we all know, large government organizations are paragons of systemic virtue. So one of the things that they have on their list is making sure that the system is in fact up to date and functioning.
That's good. All of this is good. All of this is very long overdue, and it's fantastic that it's finally not a taboo topic to discuss anymore, that it's out there, it's in the open. It does seem like all of this came to be as a result of the Horizon Alaska pilot that kind of had a breakdown and tried to turn off the engines in flight. Actually, almost successfully did. But if that's what it takes for this entire thing to be overhauled and for mental health to finally be not something that pilots have to hide, but something that is accepted and hopefully required at some point. If that's the route we had to take to get here, so be it. But at least it is out there and openly being discussed because it has been sorely needed.
Yeah, I mean, the panel's work, this committee's work really began in earnest after the Germanwings crash. And that was 2015. So here we are nearly 10 years later, finally with the panel making some recommendations to the FAA for changes to the system. The wheels move slowly.
It's taken a while. The wheels move slowly, but in that time, we have had a number of other incidents directly related or suspected to be due to mental health issues with pilots. So, of course, the Horizon one, but also maybe possibly the China Eastern crash in 2020. We'll never know for sure. They'll never tell us, but maybe that one too. So this is a problem that needs attention now. And thankfully, it's finally happening.
We turn our attention to labor news.
Oh boy.
We don't talk a lot about the ins and outs of labor relations in the aviation industry, but this one is just frankly too good not to talk about.
We have to talk about it. And we've mentioned strikes, I think a couple episodes ago, because it felt like the number, frequency, and severity of strikes had really been on the increase recently. And here we have a story that the Air France pilots representative, the rep of the Air France Pilot Association, is calling for a work stoppage, which is another term for a strike, ironically, over a government bill which aims to limit the right to strike in the transport sector. So really coming full circle there, that the government wants to curb, not ban, curb the periods of time which public transport workers or transport sector workers can strike, prohibiting that up to 60 days per year. This information comes to us from Flight Global. And of course, the Air France pilots are not too happy about that, and they want to go on strike because of the rules implemented to possibly prevent them from going on strike. Yeah, it's perfect.
It's the quintessential French labor story.
Yeah, it doesn't get better. We're going on strike because you're trying to curb our right to go on strike. So if you're flying Air France on April 15th or 16th, maybe, I don't know, watch out for that. Yeah.
Check your flight details.
Yep.
In good labor news, Lufthansa has finally made an agreement with the ground workers represented by the Verdi union. So that's 20,000 ground staff that work for Lufthansa, Lufthansa Cargo, and Lufthansa Technik. This is a 2-year deal that includes a 12.5% increase in pay for the union members. So Good for them for getting their raise, and good for Lufthansa for getting that contract done before the height of the summer season.
Yes, that is in effect for 2 years. So not the longest term contract. So I'm sure we'll be doing this whole dance again in 24 months. It seems like the Lufthansa unions got what they were asking for, which I wish Lufthansa would have just given into that before they went on strike like 15 times this year already. But what's done is done.
There you go. And then this one is how, we often say all things are interconnected. United Airlines is asking some of its pilots to take the month of May off without pay because the airline just doesn't have enough aircraft for them to fly.
Whoops.
We previously talked about how United is expecting that it will be 100 aircraft short by the end of the year compared to what it planned to have. And that's mostly based on 737 MAX delays. But there are also some 787 delays mixed in there.
And some A321s. Airbus is not
some
off the
A321s,
hook
that's
here.
true.
We're an equal opportunity basher.
I don't know about equal opportunity, but just based on the order numbers.
Hey, we don't pick and choose. Boeing does this to itself.
Fair enough. So yeah, because of the aircraft delays, United is asking pilots to take some time or all of May off unpaid and says that this request may extend through the summer season. This is 100% voluntary. I'm not sure what happens if enough people don't take time off, but I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Man, wild the swing this industry has taken in the last couple of years, going from we can't possibly hire enough pilots fast enough. There's a shortage. What are we going to do? We can't operate our routes because we don't have pilots to, hey, maybe sit this business quarter
we
out.
can't operate our routes because we don't have enough aircraft.
Yeah, that's crazy. But what isn't these days?
Fair enough.
It's certainly not the bag fees.
Not the bag fees, because those are easy to figure out, never change, and you know exactly what you're going to get when you're going to get it. Right?
Yeah, no. In JetBlue's newfound quest for money, JetBlue really needs money right now, by the way. So if you have any money, please give it to JetBlue. That's their messaging right now. Just give it to them. Since the Spirit thing and the Northeast Alliance thing, JetBlue really needs your money. And one way, aside from preferred seating, which is just giving them money for a seat that is a normal seat, JetBlue would also like you to give them a different amount of money for checking a bag, changing dynamically. I don't know if this is a thing that's been done before. It's innovative in an industry where it is really difficult to do something like this. I hate it, but it is interesting. I will give them that. Ian, do you happen to know more about this?
Yes.
When will the fee change?
I'm not sure if I know more, but I have more information. So the price of your first check bag on JetBlue ranges between $35 and $50 under the new fee structure. If you check a bag within 24 hours of departure, the price jumps to $45 for off-peak dates.
What is an off-peak day?
And $50 for peak dates. So this is where you get the change. And it depends on your frequent flyer level, your credit card details, and it's also depending on the peak dates. And the peak dates it's like half the year.
Okay, so it's IATA summer season, basically.
Kind of, but not really, because it's also some of the winter. So here we go. For bookings on or after March 22nd. So if you're booking a ticket now. Also, the third check bag fee is $125 for off-peak and $135 for peak. It's $150 if you want to check a fourth bag.
Huh. Cheaper to buy another ticket and then just check that one once.
So the peak dates are as follows. April 11th through the 29th.
Easter.
June 20th.
No, that's after Easter. June, okay.
So it's basically all the back half of June, July, August, into the beginning of September. So June 20th through September 3rd. So through Labor Day weekend. Then you get into the Thanksgiving period. So the 21st of November through the 2nd of December. And then you've got your Christmas travel. So the 19th of December through the 6th of January. And then peak times for Valentine's Day, the 13th of February through the 24th of February. And then back into spring break. So basically all of April.
Okay. This used to be the airline that prided itself on bringing humanity back to air travel. This ain't that. This is something different. This is unique, I think. I don't know of any other airline that dynamically changes the bag fee quite like this, but good luck to JetBlue. Okay.
And so I should say all of that includes the $10 off if you do it 24 hours before departure. If it's within 24 hours of departure, it's $10 more across the board.
Oh, how generous of them.
So book early, I guess?
I don't know. It's one way to ensure that every single passenger ends up trying to board the aircraft with carry-on bags.
Then my question is, what happens if you book an off-peak ticket, pay for your baggage, but then have to change your ticket?
You're going to have to give them more money.
Do you?
I don't know. I don't want to find out. I don't check a bag. Who checks a bag?
I don't know. Hopefully not anyone flying JetBlue. I assume they've priced this out so that they're going to make more money, but maybe they're confusing their customers into, here's $100 so I don't have to deal with it.
That sounds like the Spirit way of doing things, but I don't know. JetBlue, if this is what JetBlue thinks it has to do to survive as a company and continue being an airline that flies to places, so be it. We don't have to like it, but they're not in dire straits, but they're not doing great now, and they got to figure out how to bring in some revenue now that Spirit is not something that they can play with anymore.
Good luck to them, and good luck to anyone trying to figure out how to check a bag on JetBlue. Jason.
Yes.
Next Monday is the total eclipse.
Yeah, I'll be in the basement of Penn Station getting on a train.
Every day is a total eclipse.
The sun has never shone down there. It's never happened. It will never happen. So I'll be in the worst place possible for this. But some people, a lot of people, will be on airplanes. And a lot of these people will be on airplanes just to see the eclipse following the path of totality. I think Delta is actually operating a few flights specifically, not chartered, but an additional flight from, let's say, I think it was like Dallas and Houston to Detroit, which is pretty much the whole path. But an interesting question was raised and answered by Jetwine. Scott Spangler on the blog posed the question, does flying during a total eclipse count as nighttime flying? Which is really kind of a head scratcher, isn't it?
I mean, sure.
It's dark, and you are not only certain pilots are allowed to fly at night. You have to be certified to fly at night, since you will not be in I guess, VFR conditions. But it's interesting, but the answer is no. FAR 1.1 defines nighttime as the time between the end of evening civil twilight and the beginning of morning civil twilight, as published in the Air Almanac, converted to local time. So, no, if you are flying for a few hours between Texas and Michigan in the path of totality during the eclipse, it does not count in your logbook as nighttime flying. Sorry.
But there is some other interesting information that goes along with the eclipse. In addition to some commercial carriers operating special flights for the eclipse, and I'm sure we'll be following along with those on Monday afternoon, the FAA is treating this very seriously because they are expecting airports to be affected. They're telling aircraft that they should be prepared for airborne holding, reroutes, expected departure clearance times for all domestic IFR arrivals and departures. Traffic management initiatives are possible. And they're trying to assist FBOs with staging of private aircraft. So this is basically affecting all airports within 50 miles on either side of the path of totality. So basically a line stretching from southern Texas and curving upwards through Texas, Arkansas, southeastern Missouri, southern Illinois, most of Indiana, most of Ohio, and then up through northern Pennsylvania, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, and then off into Canada. And so that's a lot of space. So they're saying, expect that there could be a lot of planes in your way where you don't normally expect them.
Yeah, that's why I'm taking a train.
how busy things are going to be. So it'll be interesting to see if we get any TFRs out of it too. The FAA says it is possible that TFRs could be put into place. But yeah, Monday afternoon, local time in the US. Make sure you've got the eclipse glasses before you look at the sun, but enjoy.
Good advice. Good advice. Don't look at it.
Don't look directly at the sun. That is the show. This has been episode 262 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick here, as always, with
Jason Rabinowitz. Thanks for listening.